Hello, I'm Kimberly Henry, and this is Living the Good Life. In this series, we'll feature conversations around ways to embrace the goodness of life and take a big, juicy bite out of it. Food for the soul and the funny bone. Learn to give more time to yourself, become a better friend, lead an amazing life, and how to tell the best joke at the party. Living the good life can mean different things to different people. Whatever it is for you, I hope you'll find some inspiration here to live your most joyful, authentic life. Now, on to today's conversation. Today's guests are co-founders of The Resting Mind, co-hosts of the podcast Make Your Life Magnificent with Jackie and Mimi, and certified life coaches who work with us Generation X women on the things that keep us up at night. We're talking things like finances, marriage, career, aging parents, and anxiety. These ladies help Gen X women create sustainable change using proprietary tools that combine brain science and energy leadership. You may have seen them in Business Insider, Entrepreneur, Thrive Global, Tiny Buddha, or TEDx. Please welcome today's guests, Jackie Gadeen and Mimi Bishop.
Hey, Kimberly. Thank you for having us.
Hi there. We're so thrilled to be here.
It is so great to have you on. I love your energy, and I have been looking forward to this chance to have this conversation for some time now. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, we've been excited about this as well.
How long have you guys been working together on your podcast and in your business?
Well, we launched the podcast in January, and so we're kind of closing in just about a year, which is exciting. And we've been in business for 3 years, but we officially launched about 24 months ago.
Not even. It's not even been 24 months.
18 months.
Yes, it's only been 18
crazy.
months. It goes fast. Or slow. It depends. It's dog years in some ways and really fast in other ways.
Yeah, today's been really fast.
Today's been really fast.
I love the energy that you have together. Did you guys know each other for a long time before you started working together?
This is the craziest story in the world. We knew of one another for about 10 years before we met. We were introduced by a mutual friend. And like I said, she had always talked about Jackie to her and Mimi to Jackie. And long story, but when we both left our corporate jobs, she insisted that we meet for a cup of coffee because we both had become coaches. And we met over an innocent cup of coffee. And from there, like the seed of our business was planted that day. It was kind of an immediate soul connection.
It was. And I think we just, not only our energy and how well we connected, but also our perspectives, because I come to our business partnership around brain science and Mimi comes with energy and energy leadership. So we thought, if we can combine this to create a proprietary formula to help people, we've got some magic happening. So that's where the seed was born.
That's exactly where the seed was born. The interesting thing, though, is we had big corporate careers in New York City. We were both big media executives. And I was literally sitting behind her at a conference about 8 years prior to meeting in person. And she stood, I loved her outfit, to be perfectly honest. And she stood out and not that long ago, I said, by the way, were you at that conference and you had like this out? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah,
and we didn't even put it together right away either.
Not
so
for
one
years.
of those things that clicked. So
yeah.
So our orbits were circling for a very long time. And when the timing was right, we felt that, the universe threw us together.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting how an outfit or just the energy that somebody has can kind of draw you in and eventually something's going to happen there?
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So what made you guys start working with Gen X women?
Oh, because we are them. And we knew that we felt that nothing in the world was actually catered or geared toward us. So everything was about the millennials, and all of our friends were, I don't want to say griping, but they were struggling with the same things. They were struggling with not being able to kind of advance in their career, or struggling with finances because they've had the .com boom and bust, the 2008 bust. So really heavy things that have hurt them financially. They've also struggled with their aging parents or children with special needs. And all of a sudden we're all sitting there not knowing what to do. So we launched the Gen X vision based on Ada Calhoun's book, Why We Can't Sleep. At the time, it wasn't a book. It was actually an article.
It was an article.
And it hit home for us. But what we didn't like was that she was just talking about why everybody felt this way, which I think was great to shine the light on it. But there was no action to pull women out of it. And we feel that there's a difference between feeling like you're part of a tribe and almost staying there because you're like, well, everyone feels this way. So I can feel stuck and I can realize that it's not about me for a while because nobody feels like it's about them or that they have time. So instead, we feel like great identifier. So glad we're shining the light, but you don't have to stay there. So we help women kind of come out the other side feeling really rejuvenated and excited with a goal and permission to focus on what they want to instead of the needs of the family, the career, and everything else.
I love this from your Facebook group in your About section. We are a place for Gen X women who are worn out, frayed, and are realizing that having it all isn't really all it's cracked up to be. And I can't tell you how often I felt that way. It's like, really?
Well, we were the first generation where we were told you can have it all. Mm-hmm. You know, you can have the career and the job and the husband and the house. And so we felt this pressure to go ahead and do it all, only to realize that, yeah, guess what? We're totally burnt out and exhausted. And it may not be what we really wanted in the first place.
Right. What's playing in my head right now? See if you recognize this. We can bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan.
Well, I knew that you were going to say that. We were raised on that. Yes. We were raised on it. We were very impressionable when that came out.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And those expectations that were put on us by our family and our friends, and then what we put on ourselves were so heavy, and we didn't realize that we were living our lives based on what we thought we were supposed to do. And a lot of women still are versus what we want to do. I don't even think a lot of women know what they want. Mm-hmm. And that's the other scary thing, because they know that they're not happy. Happiness is a big thing for our group and for the women that we work with. Sadly, a lot of them find they're not happy,
but they don't know what they want. They don't know what happiness is.
It's crazy.
They've lost touch with it.
Yeah.
Well, because we did come from this generation before us where we had very well-defined roles.
That's correct.
Pretty much we're born a female and you knew what that meant for you and for the rest of your life, for the most part.
That's right. And even if you were to have a career, my mom always tells this story about how she had a relative who insisted, to my grandfather that he send his two daughters to college. But even with college educated women, their options really were nursing, teaching. My mom and my aunt became teachers, or becoming a secretary. Mm-hmm. That was really your option back in those days. So our generation really was the first where it was like, you can become a doctor. You don't have to be a nurse. You can become, CEO. You don't have to be the secretary.
Mm-hmm. I remember feeling very overwhelmed graduating from high school when that conversation was happening. What are you going to do with your life? And I felt like I could not make a choice. My answer was, I just want to do a lot of things and figure out what clicks. And that was a very unpopular answer at that time.
I could imagine. And it's funny you said that, because someone asked me recently, I have an 11-year-old, about to be 12-year-old. And they said, well, what does Peyton want to do when she grows up? And I said, I don't ask her. And I said, what are you talking about?
It was me.
It was you. And I said, oh, there you go. And I said, I don't ask her. Instead of asking her, what I do is when we are exposed to different things, we were watching a scary movie and she likes the idea of it. And then she gets scared. She's like, let's turn it off. I'm afraid. I said, before I turn it off, can I just put it on mute? So we put it on mute and she went, oh, that feels so much better. Oh. And I said, do you know that someone's job is to create the music that goes with the movie so that you can emotionally have those reactions? So instead of telling her, you need to do this, you need to figure it out, I try to enlighten her with new and different jobs besides a teacher and a doctor that are experiences and options for her, so that there's no pressure, because I feel like there's so much pressure, especially as young women, even men, to figure that out. And you're 12 or you're 18. I'm 48 years old. I still don't know what I want to do.
You want to be CEO of the Resting Mind.
Oh, I already am.
You're doing it.
I'm doing it, but it took me a long time. It took me a long time to figure it out. Or the goalpost moved, right? So what I thought I wanted, all of a sudden you get to a certain age and you're like, that's not really what I want anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly who I'm working with, is folks who, like myself, have gotten to their 40s and their 50s and they realize they're not doing what it is that makes their heart sing, what they feel like is going to make them happy, with the end of their life, looking back.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think also by the time we get to this age where we hit 50, I turned 50, almost 51 now.
You girls are just babies.
It becomes.
Oh, thank you. Sometimes we feel that way. Sometimes,
I'm sorry, Mimi. I think I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. You realize that, there is a cutoff where you don't necessarily feel that in your 20s or 30s. And so you really want to make sure that the time that you have, you're using wisely. And yet I think we recognize that we're not necessarily using that time wisely, which adds this layer of stress. That has definitely kept me awake at 2 a.m.
Yeah. The stress and the wise use of time. And then add that to COVID and the current social and political climate of today. How does that affect people that you work with?
Well, it's just ratcheted up everyone's stress levels. People were a lot of our clients were dealing with high levels of stress and anxiety, just being where they are in their lives. And this has just exasperated it. Our business grew during this because people were really feeling the crunch either in their career or their stress levels or their happiness levels, where something like this can be a real eye opener for people where they're like, I need to make a change.
And I think for Gen X women on top of that, they go into all of this, right? Having the stress level. And now all of a sudden they're home because you can't go to the office anymore. Their husbands are home or their significant other. Their kids are home. And the demands on them have grown. So not only are you a career woman and a mom and a wife, but you're running a 24-hour diner, your laundry service, you're a teacher, you're a tutor. All of a sudden, their jobs have gone up exponentially, and they're really crunched, and they're feeling extremely afraid, and then don't know how to set up boundaries around all of these things to preserve themselves.
And they feel guilty preserving themselves. We're never really taught as females, I think, anyway, especially in our generation, to put ourselves first and how to take care of ourselves. There's a lot of guilt and just not even sure where to start.
It makes it more anxiety producing because you don't know how to behave. You don't know how to react.
That's correct. Yes.
What do you do with the brain health and the energy science? How do you turn that around for your clients?
One of the biggest things that we share and teach our clients there's a couple of really great tools, but one of the biggest ones is really how we talk about ourselves and talk to ourselves. The words we use are so powerful. And so often when women have a lot of anxiety, right? There's over 50% of women are on some sort of antidepressant for anxiety. That's a tremendous statistic. And once they feel like they've hit that marker, they've identified.
And you said 50%, 50%.
50% of women are on some sort, and this is not Gen X, this is overall women, are on some sort of antidepressant for anxiety. So then they start saying, oh, it's because I'm anxious. I am anxious. I'm an anxious person. So it's now their identifier. So the first thing we try to do is get women to say, you may feel anxious, but you aren't anxious. It's not who you are. It's a feeling within you. And then we also get them to understand how to rename that feeling. So not everything is I'm anxious, right? That's a heavy, heavy catabolic energy. But if you said I'm nervous or I'm concerned, just that tweak of language can lessen and lower that anxiety level so that they feel more in control. So we really teach and train our clients to understand and be in touch with their emotions, say them out loud, and then rename them so they don't have so much weight. We do that by 8%. We call this the 8% rule.
I love this. This is my favorite, the 8%, because we want people. So Jackie mentioned energy level, and it's, saying I'm anxious is a catabolic energy level. Think of energy as a ladder with 7 rungs. And the bottom is level 1, 2. Those are very low energy levels. Your goal is to get to the top of that ladder. Now, no one can stay at the top very long, but you want to be somewhere in the middle is a great place to be. So what we can do is 8% at a time, bring you up those rungs of the ladder. And so that's just identifying maybe the very next thing. Instead of saying, I'm anxious, I'm concerned. Great. Let's say I'm concerned for quite some time. That brings you up a level. And then from there, it could go to,
I'm torn.
I'm torn.
Right.
Or I need to make a
works.
decision or whatever, and, bring up another. So it's just getting people to that's a sustainable change 8% at a time.
Because too often, and you probably, if you've ever felt anxious, Kimberly, what's the worst thing to say to you? Oh, just calm down. And you're like, if I could,
Right.
I would, right? That's the first thing people tell you. So we don't tell people you have to calm down. That's not realistic. But what you can do is just lighten it a little bit, from even anxious to I'm stressed, or from overwhelmed to I'm busy, or from I'm busy to I've got a lot going on. So how do we get them to really feel that and then feel it in their bodies so that they are being kinder to themselves and being more resilient?
What kind of a time frame are you working with here?
So most of our clients work with us for 4 months to get them through whatever process that they're going through, whatever they want to get to. Some of them stay longer, but it depends on what they're trying to do. So we always say our goal is to get you from a caterpillar to a butterfly. We want to get you to have wings that you can fly off and do your own thing. We want to teach you the tools. We're not therapists, right? We're going to stay with you for 10 years. We're about getting you to your goals and looking forward to the future and giving you the tools to go and fly on your own.
Fantastic. Now tell me again about the 8% rule. Why are we calling this the 8% rule?
Well, so all of us have something called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is when you say, I want to lose 20 pounds. So consciously you set this goal. I want to lose 20 pounds. So every choice you make consciously is to lose that 20 pounds. But subconsciously, your brain's like, you can't lose 20 pounds. There's no way you could lose 20 pounds. So what the 8% rule does is it actually gives you a goal that's only, or moves you only 8% that your brain can wrap around, and subconsciously and consciously you can believe in it. So instead of saying I lost 20 pounds, I need to lose 20 pounds, if you say, I need to lose 2 pounds, you're like, I can lose 2 pounds. Anyone can lose 2 pounds. So then that 8% rule breaks everything down, and then you move just in 8% increments. So we make all of our goals more attainable. And it also, when you hit that first goal, you get a dopamine rush. And when you get a dopamine rush, it makes you want to hit a goal again. So what we're doing is we're leveraging the brain science so that we can set goals and hit goals and ultimately create new and formulate new habits.
And from an energetic perspective, when we start to build that confidence, you're tapping into the energy of confidence, which is much better than this energy of maybe resistance or feeling like, I'm a failure, that kind of thing. And that really pushes you forward too. So not only is it a dopamine hit, it's also an energetic hit.
So you're taking somebody who's identifying as anxious, and over time we're stepping them down to identifying as busy or got a lot going on, or whatever terminology that they seek. How does that solve the problem? I mean, I'm following you, but it's going to be hard for somebody to say, you're going to solve my anxiety problem by just making these steps. So help us understand.
Right. So that's only one. So that's one tool to understand your language. So that's one of our tools that we put in place. And another thing that we do is we teach women to use something called the worry log. So what the worry log is, you might have heard, so everything that we have that we worry about, that ruminates in here, stays here because our subconscious mind keeps going up. Here it is, up. I forgot I got to do that.
And looks for evidence too, right? It's looking for evidence. It's used to, worry is almost a habit at some point, right?
Stress is a habit. We get all of that. We get used to that. So we want to shift the chemicals in our brain, and we want to shift the way that we see things. So when you worry about something, we have women write down everything that they worry about.
I need a book.
Write it down. You do. You need a book. And we have women carry around their little book or do it on their phone and talk it in. And then what we have them do is at the end of the week, you take a look at what you worried about and you say, which of these do I actually have control over? And you'll notice how many things you have no control. I'm worried about my daughter starting school next week with COVID. There's nothing I could do about it. I can prepare her by giving her a mask and having sanitizer and giving her gloves. But I'm worrying about something I don't have control over. So once you cross those out, you're like, I can't control this. Why am I worrying about it? Then in the next 2 weeks, we go back and say, okay, which of these have come true? what of these things that I've worried about actually have happened? And only about 8% of what we worry about, coincidentally, actually happens. So what we're doing is we're trying to train women to understand that what we worry about isn't coming true and isn't something that we can control. Again, creating new habits. So when you do that and you acknowledge it and say, that didn't happen. Why was I so worried about that? What made me think that by worrying about it, I would have control or feel like I'm better prepared when none of those things are true? So it's unraveling those truths so that people can recognize what's really going on for them.
How do you feel energetic wise about the philosophy that the more you worry about it, the more you actually create the possibility for it to come true?
Exactly. So the more you worry about it, the more you're staying in the energetic loop of worry, right? So even using something like the worry log causes us to become aware, and then we can decide to choose a different thought or rename the thought or rename the emotion using all of these tools. And that brings us out of that constant loop of the same energy of worry to a higher energy level.
What kinds of experiences can you share with us of folks who have gone through this process? What does life look like for somebody who is in this energetic loop of anxiety? And when that goes away, what do I focus on?
Well, that's the key.
First of all,
they don't know what to focus on, which is...
So it's a couple of things. So number one, it's eye-opening for people because they don't even realize that it's a habit, that they have control over this. A lot of times they feel like we started this conversation, I'm anxious. This is something that happens to me. They don't recognize that it's something that they have more control over than they think. So it's really eye-opening for people. It really gives them a sense of control and agency, which is important. But you bring up an excellent point. A lot of times they get to this point where they are not feeling as anxious. And then it's almost like, now what? Because worrying gave them something to do. Right.
And they also, so humans also unfortunately get addicted to stress. So stress is an addiction because it releases cortisol and adrenaline in our bodies. So we get addicted to that. So even if we learn how to manage our stress, if we're not careful, we can easily go back to that because think about someone who had a really stressful job and they're like, I'm leaving this job. It's too stressful. They go to a new job. They're singing and dancing because it's like, yeah, finally I'm feeling good. And the next thing they know, they're starting to get stressed all over again because they find and seek it out. So what we try to do is work with them to create new habits, to fill those gaps with a different lens and perspective that isn't stress. And also recognizing the physical feelings and also the triggers that actually trigger your stress. So how do you can recognize that before you get to the point of it feeding and fueling and then getting addicted to it. And then all the terrible things those chemicals do to our bodies.
Right. And that was my next question is, what about the physiological effects of the stress, but also the changes that you experience when you start to alleviate and treat that stress differently?
Right. Well, as you can imagine, better sleep, better blood pressure, better physical energy where you're not feeling weighed down by all that anxiety and worry.
Better immune system. So the immune system also goes up. So there's a great, I don't know if anyone of your listeners have ever read a Dr. Joe Dispenza book, but he talks all about how powerful our mind is and how negatively it can destroy our physical being. And so for us, what we try to do is incorporate both of those physical with the brain science, with the energy for sustainable change, because we don't want our clients to walk away and come back in 6 months and be like, everything was unraveled because it was just a blip. So how do we give them tools so that they could stick with these things and feel when things are happening and they're slipping back? Because that's part of nature. We've had for so many people, especially Gen X, 40 years of conditioning, 40 years of beliefs that we can't unravel all of them within 6 months, but we can really get them to get to a good place where they can be more mindful of it and more aware of it.
It's so empowering when you understand that you have different ways of responding.
That's exactly it.
I think a lot of women and men don't realize that we have more choice about what happens around us than we think. Everybody, bad stuff happens to each and every one of us. And the goal is not for you not to feel the dip, right? The goal, of course, something tragic happens.
And you should respond that way.
Yes.
Right?
And of course you'll feel it. The goal is to have the resilience to bounce back up. And if COVID taught us anything, it is that we as humans are much more resilient than we give us credit for. If we were having this podcast interview last year and you would say, I'm going to throw a hypothetical. What happens if you would have to stay in your house for 3 months and see no one? I'd be like, I couldn't do it. I would die. I'm an extrovert. Right? Think about it. And what? I'm still alive. I'm happy. I might have wanted to kill my husband and my child a few more times than normal. But we as humans are more resilient. We have to give ourselves an understanding and credit for that. And building that resiliency, and the way we do that is to make sure that we understand that we have more power and control over our mind, our thoughts, and our feelings than we think we do.
And to be clear, I don't think I could have conceived of anything like COVID 6 months or a year ago.
No. I don't think no.
It's crazy. It's crazy. You're like the zombie. It's like the zombie thing, right? If everyone would be like, oh yeah, like zombies are happening. I feel like it's that. It's like the Walking Dead.
Now, if I see a zombie walking down the street, I'm coming after you for saying that. You manifested that.
Oh no, manifesting. My mom used to say when she did mind control her whole life, and she used to say if somebody said something, she would cancel. So I'm going to cancel that.
Yeah. You offer, ladies, a free resource on your website, the 5 Steps to Stress Less. Can you talk a little bit about what's in there?
Sure. So we give step-by-step guides to kind of understanding your stress triggers. A lot of times there are patterns to what triggers your stress. So I'll give you a great example of mine, and Mimi knows this all too well. When my dogs all bark at the same time and it reverberates off my floor-to-ceiling window, my anxiety level, right? I would feel angst-ridden. And so I even had to work on that. And I know that when they do, that is my trigger. It amplifies my stress. So what we do is we get people to understand what their triggers are, to really dig deep into that. And then we show them step-by-step ways to actually alleviate some of that and new practices to do that.
Fantastic. So they can download that from... I believe I found that on your website. Is that right?
Yes. www.therestingmind.com. And I know you have the link. You can add it to the show notes, and they can ask for us, email us if they want a copy. We're happy to get back to them as well.
Yeah. And we'll point folks to your Facebook group. I know there's a lot of great tidbits and just community happening in there around.
Yes, we have about 500 members, and we talk about everything from aging parents to confidence to
relationships. Yes. We've talked about dating after 40, what it's like to be married for multiple decades. I mean, you can imagine the conversations that go on.
All different perspectives,
and all of it is and a lot of cheek and nostalgia as well, because we want to have fun while we help people. But it's a nice community, and I think again, Gen X women don't have a lot of community. There aren't any websites out there for Gen X women to go to, content that helps and supports them. So we want to be able to do that either one-on-one or through the podcast or through our community, so that they are supported any way that really is in line with how they like to learn.
Yeah, we're very proud of the community that has been built, because so many people will come in and just say, we feel like we're really heard, and it's such a positive environment. And so that's just such a special thing to have created. But we also give back as much as we can. We do a lot of coaching around happiness, career, and give a lot of attention to those topics, because we know that that's something that people are struggling with.
Wonderful. I think that's really important, considering, again, the generation that we're in, where we kind of grew up as women being a little bit catty and competitive with one another. So to find a place where we can be real and genuine and supportive is so valuable.
We agree.
It's so funny you said that. We're actually going to be doing a podcast episode on that in a couple of weeks ourselves, because we're calling it, stop knocking each other's invisible crown off, right? Because women feel like there's a lot of thoughts on why this is, but women don't always support each other the right way. They find themselves. And somebody was saying to me, somebody was saying they believed it was because there was more masculine energy surrounding us and we felt like we had to take on masculine energy. While I think that's some of it, I also think I've seen girls on the playground at 5 years old and there's something innate in it. There's something, not all, but there's enough meanness that is an insecurity in girls that I just don't know where it comes from, which if I was a researcher going back to school, that's what I would focus on. But that's another story.
That's an interesting topic.
That would be a fascinating show.
Yes, it will. It will be. I just think that we need to be supportive of one another. And the more that we can all come together and make the pie grow, the bigger the pie is. It's not a competition. And we have to run our own race, and the only person we should be really trying to be better than is the person that's staring us in the mirror. So my tomorrow should look better than today for me, not because I want to look like someone else.
I could not say that any better.
Yeah, and I've been hearing that message quite a bit, and I just hope that we really, as women, take it to heart, because it's easy to put it on a meme or a plaque. Let's take it to heart and really harness that energy.
Yeah, we just need to stop judging other people. Everyone's got to live their life the way they need to live their life. And if it means whatever it is, the choices they make, the statements they do, the jobs they take on, it's their life. And as long as they're happy, and I think too many people have too much to say because it doesn't align with their own principles. But my principles aren't correct. I'm only human. I'm flawed.
Your principles are your principles.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
If somebody took one thing from our conversation today, just one nugget, Jackie, what would you hope that to be?
The one nugget I want women to really hear, or men if you're listening too, because it goes the same way, is we have more control over how we respond to things than we think. And so there are lots of ways. We spend so much time talking about how we can exercise our bodies, how we can become in shape in our bodies. And I want people to start thinking about how they can exercise their mind. What can you do to change your perspectives? What can you do to balance yourself out? What can you do to create more dopamine and endorphins versus cortisol and adrenaline so that you can exercise your brain for healthy happiness and contentment?
Great answer. And I keep wanting to point out that cortisol thing that has come up a few times lends itself to a lot of physiological things that, that, again, a whole nother show, but
it's true. We can come back anytime you want and talk about it. It is amazing how detrimental it is for all of us. And if you are a woman, a Gen X woman, you know that it sits right in your middle.
Yes.
That's where the cortisol sits.
Yes, I know.
Me too.
Mimi, how about yourself? Is there any one nugget that you can identify with that you would hope people take home with them?
Yes. It's to remember to move in small increments. So that 8% rule, it's so tiny but powerful. If it's used consistently, it really compounds, and you will be amazed how much sustainable change you can make 8% at a time.
I think that's so important to understand. It can be challenging, especially for somebody like myself. I want results and I want them now. And so that can be a little bit frustrating, but then it never sticks. So
that's exactly
that's right. More frustrating to go back to square one.
It's so, well, think about it. I mean, so you're hungry, you can have food delivered in an hour, you can have a package delivered by tomorrow. You can get any information you want within seconds. We are an instant gratification world, and so we want everything to be done. But if you can really take small steps and understand your ultimate and absolute why is what we call it. Like, why do you want to, for example, lose weight? It's not to feel better. Right? There's always a bigger answer to that. Then we can start really understanding the reasons behind why we do what we do and make those small choices. So, yeah.
Really great tips and information. I feel like we could hang out for hours and just untap a lot of things. Unpack maybe is a better word.
Unpack.
Well, we'd be happy to come back anytime and unpack all that luggage.
Right. Some of it I just want to just keep it in there. Stick it in the closet.
It's easier. The back of the closet and hope it doesn't ever fall on our head.
Yeah. Right. We've been talking with Jackie Gadeen and Mimi Bishop of therestingmind.com. And you can also check out their podcast, Make Your Life Magnificent. You can find that at therestingmind.com/podcast. And we will put a link to the 5 steps to stress less and the Facebook group in the show notes. So be sure and look for those if you want to reach out to Jackie and Mimi and unpack some stuff with them. Ladies, this has been a blast. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having us on. This has been great, and we want to continue living vibrantly as well.
Yay. Be sure to check the show notes for links mentioned in this episode and join us in the Living the Good Life Facebook community for previews of each episode, the opportunity to pose questions directly to our guests, bonus content, and a community of people committed to living their best life and sharing the journey. Thanks for listening. Let us know what value you received from this episode and what you'd like us to explore in the future in the comments. And please take a moment to drop us a like or some stars. I'm Kimberly Henry. Let's get out there and live the good life.